Hi, I'm Stunning Stella Cheeks.
And I'm the Enigma Erin Klein.
And this is
Not Your Demographic.
We used to be a feminist wrestling podcast.
Shockingly, we'd rather talk about literally anything else now.
Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. We don't know what this energy is going to be like show coming to you from the internet.
Yeah, well, we had a burlesque show last night, and it was our first full one back since March 14th, 2019. The show we did the week before, like the day before shutdown, not even the week before. We got it in under the wire.
Literally the day before, yeah.
So it was a lot of, do we still know how to do this? Chaotic energy. We sold out the show. It was a very messy show.
It was literally the messiest show Plan 9 has ever done.
That is not true. The one with the eggs was way messier.
It was the only act that was messy.
No, that one also had the slippery candle wax.
Okay, it had the slippery candle wax and the eggs, but this one had whipped cream, beer, champagne that was spilled on the floor, your insane pie. Like, this was, but as the person who normally has to clean up the acts, this was definitely the
okay,
messiest.
But we were more prepared than, because the wax and the eggs were harder to clean up because we were less prepared.
That's true. That's a good point.
We had several tarps and brooms and Clorox wipes.
Yeah,
and
this
towels.
was way better. That's true. This was a lot better, but it was still very fucking messy.
Mine wouldn't have been as messy had the whipped cream not exploded in my duffel bag that I didn't realize exploded until I opened it on stage, and I had a moment of, fuck it, we'll do it live.
I mean, you said that as you were putting it in the bag. You were like, well, I hope this doesn't explode. Like, well, that means it's definitely gonna explode.
Yeah, I fucking jinxed myself. But there was enough to draw the sigil. I was like, just have enough to make at least a circle left.
Hilarious.
And that is where my years of performance training kicked in, where I was still had a very good burlesque act, even though literally one of the worst things that could have happened happened. So yeah, I now have a supernatural Dean Winchester burlesque act that is 7 minutes and 16 seconds long, requires a tarp and a video element. So if you're looking to book it, hit me up. Now I just got to do a Hannibal act, and all of my fandoms will have a burlesque act. And I have a perfect Hannibal act in my head, and I cannot wait to do it. It's very funny. It is very funny. I delight myself. But to be fair, I delight myself, and the audience is still having a good time. It's not just me up there laughing to myself.
Oh, no, like that, I mean, I've seen, like 6, 7 total episodes of Supernatural, and that act made me laugh so hard I cried. Like, it was so funny.
Didn't feel like 7 minutes and 16 seconds. It was it clipped.
It moved pretty quickly, and, like, you cried for what, like 2 whole minutes?
Like a minute and 45 seconds.
That went very quickly. I was surprised by how quickly the crying went, because I knew.
So you're saying it could have lasted longer?
Oh, yeah. You could have done, like, an additional 30 seconds of that. Because, like...
Good to know. I'll take a note. I cut out a lot in that, like, confession scene. I could put more in.
Because there was just enough of, like, the eating of the whipped cream and the crying and the pie. Like, there was enough variety that... Because when you said you were just going to cry for, like, 2 minutes, I thought you meant you were just going to cry. I didn't realize you were going to, like, do a bunch of other stuff while you cried. So I felt like it actually moved pretty quickly. It definitely didn't feel like 7 minutes.
Well, see, I'm an auteur. I'm a genius. Anyways.
Auteur, fuck you.
So we're both very tired. Because not only did our show go late because everybody did an act that was like 5+ minutes long, but I came home and cleaned whipped cream out of my duffel bag. Several tarps. New rule: whoever uses the tarp has to clean their own tarp. I was like, why am I fucking cleaning off my tarp and somebody else's tarp? They need to be cleaning their own fucking tarp. The tarps are hung on my porch right now. I'm hoping Mother Nature will clean them so I don't have to.
It's going to snow and it'll just all gracefully fall off.
Mm-hmm. Or the squirrels will come and lick the whipped cream off. All right. So we're both weird, chaotic messes.
Yes.
I'm going to go first in the what have you been reading because I only read a few things and you read a bunch of things. We're the inverse.
That's right.
My week was very busy because we launched a new podcast this week.
That's right. We did.
Spooky 30s, where the first episode is me and Erin, where we talk about it, all of it.
All of it. That's right. The book, the miniseries, and both of the movies.
So if you're looking for a new horror podcast and you like the sound of my voice, also Erin's, go check out Spooky
for this
30s.
One. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was a super fun conversation. I listened back to the episode and was like, yeah, this is cool. I like the format of the show a lot. So I'm looking forward to listening to a podcast I'm not a part of once.
Yeah, you'll have to give me feedback.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, so I only finished 2 audiobooks because I was very busy this week, and technically I read like 150,000 words of fan fiction, but it doesn't count. So I was like, oh, I really want to read a werewolf book. It's been a while since I read a werewolf book. So I found one called Not His Werewolf by Annie Nichols. Yeah, it was not great. I should have known. But I like the concept. It was like a shifter who couldn't shift but was a shifter.
Interesting.
And that's like part of a thing that I'm writing for NaNoWriMo. So I was like, oh, I could read something that's similar but different. But it was like kind of lame. It was just like, no, we're soulmates. You have to be a shifter. And she was like, I can't do it. And he was like, we're going to figure it out. And then it was just like magic. Boring.
Of course it was just magic.
It was a magic tattoo. Spoiler alert, I guess. I don't read it.
Whatever. I don't even care.
Okay, cool.
I don't even want to know.
Yeah. It's part of a series. There's one called Not His Vampire and Not His Dragon, I think is the first one. There are better werewolf books. That book that you're going to talk about, The House on the Cerulean Sea, that author, they wrote a werewolf book that's actually top of my list called Wolf Song or something.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I was looking at the rest of his writer's list and was like, yeah, I bet Stella will read some of this stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I looked at the book and I was like, oh yeah, that's the other wolf book that's on my list. Yeah. And then I read this book or listened to this book on Audible. So Audible sometimes does like free books. And I was like, whatever, I'm out of credits and this sounds good. And it's called A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas. And it's a retelling of Sherlock Holmes, but like Sherlock Holmes is a woman. Like I think it's called like the Lady Sherlock series, which makes it sound fucking stupid. It's super good. It is really good. It is really clever how they deal with like Sherlock, aka Charlotte, being that, how they deal with the Mrs. Watson thing, how they deal with the stories and how they get published by the end, and the play on, if you've ever read A Study in Scarlet, like this one's obviously like loosely based on it, A Study in Scarlet Women. It was really, really clever. If you like historical fiction and you like that voice, highly recommend. If you like Sherlock Holmes stuff, highly recommend. If you like gender bent stuff, highly recommend. I was just like, oh, this is a free audiobook, whatever. I'll listen to it while I'm like cleaning my house or whatever. And I was like, I'm delighted by this. And it's a series. And I think the first 3 are free on Audible right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's funny because one I was like really looking forward to and was shit. And one I wasn't looking forward to, but I was like, this is fine. And it was amazing. So definitely highly recommend if you like any of that stuff, A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas. It was just really clever. And that's it. That's all I read. Nice. One sucked. One was really good. They're both very Stella Cheeks picks. The end.
Yeah, for real. An uncharacteristically low reading load this week, but very characteristic Stella Cheeks reading.
I know. I'm checking because I wanted to read 150 books this year. I'm at 130 out of 150, and I've been ahead all year, and now it's like, you're on track. And I told Erin, I was like, that means I'm behind. What do you mean I'm on track? I better read 15 books this week.
That's so wild. I mean, there's 6 weeks left in the year. You've got time.
I still got to read that Misha Collins poetry book. I could do that.
Yeah, that's an easy one to blow through. That's one of the ones I'm gonna talk about today. More of Stella Cheek's reading load. I finished 7 books in the last 2 weeks.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's some of them are 3 of them are poetry, but like 3 of them are not poetry. So I like really blew through a bunch. So the first thing that I finished was a book called Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. This was so good. I brought it over a couple of times while we were recording extracts, and I was telling you how much I was enjoying it. It's billed as a series of shorts, like an interconnected series of short stories. I don't actually think that's a good way to describe it. It feels more like a montage is not the right word, but a large ensemble cast novel. Like there are a couple of the chapters, because each of them is broken into a chapter, and there are a couple of characters that carry through several of the stories, and then there are like 2 or 3 characters that you only get one chapter with them, but they're like connected to the places and to the like kind of like vibe of the other characters too. So it I would not describe it as a series of short stories, but it was just such a it was a hard read in some ways, because a lot of the stories were about violence, and not just like physical violence, but like emotional violence and like violence within interpersonal relationships. But they were so good, and there were a lot of queer stories inside of the stories, and like about queer relationships, and like what's a level of violence that's like acceptable within a relationship, that I just found really fascinating. And I thought that Brandon Taylor's writing was really fucking good. So I definitely recommend it. I don't even remember how it got recommended to me. I think it might have been on one of those like best of lists from last year or something.
Yeah, one of those book lists where you're like, oh, I need to read all of these.
I know, right? You're like, oh God, how could I even? But I pulled it off of my TBR and was like, God, this is really fucking good. So I highly recommend that. I finished reading Stephen King's It, which we talked about last week, but we also talked about in Spooky 30s episode, so we won't really get into that other than to say, like, the audiobook is fucking incredible. If I can say anything about it that we haven't covered in our 2-hour episode of Spooky 30s, that the audiobook by Steven Weber is just absolutely phenomenal. It is literally the best audiobook I've ever listened to. I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you've read it before and you are like, I just cannot reread a 1,000-page book, I just cannot recommend the audiobook enough. It was so fucking good. Like, it makes me want to listen to more of his audiobooks.
Steven Weber like specifically?
Yeah.
I think he does a lot of Stephen King specifically too.
That's good, because he like understands his writer's voice very well, which was, I mean, in a book especially like It, I thought was really helpful to listen to the story. Like I said in Spooky 30s too, I don't know that I would have enjoyed the book as much if I had read it as opposed to listening to it. I felt like he really gave a sense of texture to all of the characters and to the places that are in the book too. So I just highly recommend it. It was so fucking good. I finished a book of poetry called Show by Doulas Kearney. This is one of the finalists for the National Book Award Prize for Poetry. There were things about it that I really liked, but I also felt like while I was reading it, like, I am not the audience for this book. Like, it felt like he does some really interesting things with language and with like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you know how there's like a cultural language that exists within smaller communities where like, okay, this is clearly a cultivated language. Like, that's what it felt like in a way that I was like, it's not that I can't understand this. It's just that I'm clearly not the intended audience for this, but I still really enjoyed it. And I think that that's part of why it's on the finalist list, because it's written in a way that a lot of contemporary poetry is not written. And it's so well done that I was like, okay, this... I like that there are authors and poets who are writing within unusual is not the right word, because I don't think that's an appropriate way to describe it, but like not like culturally recognized, like this is what poetry does. And so I thought the way that he played with form and language was really interesting. So I would recommend it, but I would also go into it like it's nominated for a book award for a reason, and
Right.
it's because it does very interesting things, and that might not translate for everybody, but I did really like it. I finished Some Things I Still Can't Tell You by Misha Collins.
Yeah, our favorite chaotic weirdo.
I bought because Stella sent me the link, and I literally immediately was like, well, I guess I'm going to buy this weird-ass book of poetry, even though I've, at the time, had never watched Supernatural. I've still never seen an episode with him in it. So
Which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, and so I, like, understand his place inside of Supernatural, but I know almost nothing about him other than that he's like a chaotic human tornado. It was so much better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
I really thought it was, I mean, like we talked about this before, like when we read Leonard Nimoy's first book of poetry, which was good, but it's like very basic in lots of ways. I felt the same way about this, that he doesn't do like incredible things with like form and language in the same way that I was talking about show, but some of it's very good. Some of it is like surprising in the ways that he is very personal, and some of it is like, okay, you've clearly been writing poetry for a long time, mm-hmm. and so it's not basic in the like, I'm just now figuring out what my poetic voice is. It's more just like he writes, I mean, I'm interested to see how you feel about this, because he writes in a way that's like, you're clearly a celebrity who writes poetry, and yet you're being very honest about what your life is like.
He's a very open and thoughtful person, and so it's not surprising that he is like, you know, open in that way. He's just like, I'm a weirdo and you have to be along for the ride, but I'm also super likable.
Yeah, and like there are a lot of poems that are about love, and specifically the love that he has for his now, are they just separated or are they divorced?
No, I think I'm not totally sure, but it's like semi-recent too, or like at least announced semi-recently, but they were together for a really long time.
Yeah, they're all about his estranged, I guess is maybe the right word, his estranged wife. In the acknowledgments at the end, he talks about that he, like, it must have happened right before they went to press. I mean, this is a very recently published book, so that makes sense.
New York Times bestseller.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. There's, you know, the CW crew runs hard and strong.
Well, but also he, like, honestly, Misha Collins could fucking teach a goddamn class about, like, PR. That motherfucker, like...
Yeah.
It's not just that he is, like, famous. It's that he was like, this book is gonna fucking sell. I will blood, sweat, and tears this.
Which, like, respect. I respect the hustle, especially for somebody who's writing poetry. Because he even says in the acknowledgments, like, thank you to my publishers for taking this on, because like there is literally no reason to believe that a poetry book written by a CW actor was ever gonna sell. So like it's very self-aware. But in the acknowledgments he talks about like, I was with my wife for a really long time and we're now separated, and I'm always gonna have love for her, and that's why I've included a lot of these poems about what our love life was like. And so I just really enjoyed that. He seems very human in a way that many very famous actors do not, and so I really appreciated that. So I would recommend it. I was not expecting to like or recommend it.
You know what? I have a very short list of celebrities that, like, if they came out as a shitbag, I would be like genuinely disappointed and it would like suck really bad. And he is one of them, just because he, like, one of my favorite things about when his book came out is like a bunch of the actors from all of the seasons of Supernatural were like taking pictures reading it and being like, my friend Misha Collins like wrote this. And like the fact that all of these people from like the 10 years or 11 years that he was on, like Felicia Day and Mark Shepard and I can't remember his name right now, but the guy that plays like Marv, who is like a really famous voice actor, like that those people took time out of their like day and like lives to be like, my friend did this and I like am happy about it. And also it's pretty good. Like, fucking if Jared released a fucking poetry book, they'd all be like, get fucked.
Yeah, for real. It would also probably be trash, but yeah, it was surprising. I really liked it. Also, like, when I tell you that when I got to the poem that the title is from, I fucking hollered. Like, it was not what I was expecting, and it made me laugh really hard. I was just like, this is what they pulled the title from? Like, it was... But at the same time, I think it was a really good choice. So like, I'm so interested when you read it. It's like within the first third of the book too. So I'm very excited for you to read it and get to this line and be like, what the fuck?
I'm very excited.
And then I finished, you talked about this last week, but I finished The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor. It was really good. I figured out almost all of the mysteries like immediately.
Oh, really? We're the opposite.
Yeah.
I figured them out like I had inklings about a lot of them, and then I would figure them out like right before they happened.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I was still surprised about, but in general, I like hard spoiler. If you are going to read this book and you care about spoilers, don't listen for like the next 30 seconds. I figured out who she was like immediately.
Well, yeah, like that one is pretty obvious.
Yeah, that one, it was like, there's a line in particular that she says at like the very beginning that I was like, oh, you're this person. Like
the brother stuff, and then like the bringing it back to the house specifically. Like I just feel like it was layered really well.
Yes, I would agree with that. I thought they did a good job of stacking the mysteries, and that there were so many clues, especially to that like central mystery about her background and her identity, that were easy to figure out if you're like a heavy reader like we both are, where you're like looking for that kind of stuff. But also that by the time they do the reveal and the person who reveals who she is, like if you aren't a super like what's the word I'm looking for? Introspective's not the right word. If you're not a super careful reader and you get to the reveal, I think that they also left it enough open that you could still be like, oh shit, they set this up for me and I didn't even, it could be your Scarlet. Yeah. That's what we call it in our very exclusive book club, when people miss really obvious clues.
Not as bad as the book I figured out from the book cover, where I was like, oh, she did it.
Right? Like the plot where I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is the easiest mystery in the world. But I did really enjoy Burning Girls. I liked it a lot. I thought that it was, I liked her writing style. It's usually when authors use like a super heavy dialogue, I think it distracts from the story, but she did such a good job with the dialogue that it felt very natural, that it was like, oh, I just read 7 pages of dialogue and it flowed together in a way that I still really liked. So I thought that she did a good job with that.
I think the first person narrative helps with the dialogue.
Yeah. Well, it goes back and forth too, because like parts of it are first person narratives, right, the things that are told from Jack's perspective, but then like everything else is told third person. And so I liked that there was that back and forth. And then I thought it made the transitions and the dialogue that was then in first and then in third person like easier to digest in a way that I really appreciated. So I really liked that. I just finished before we started this. I'm going to skip one and then come back to it. So I just finished before we started this another book of poetry called Not Here by Hieu, Nguyen. He's a Vietnamese author. It's really good. It took me... I've talked before about another poet who I really like, a non-binary poet named Dinez Smith. And this man is a friend of his. And so I got this recommendation through Dinez Smith. And it came out 2 years ago, and it's a bunch of poems about like memory and relationships and violation in a way that I was not expecting, but not in like some of it is pretty intense, but I wouldn't even describe it as triggering. It was just like, it was so thoughtful in so many ways. It took like 20 pages to really get into the groove of like, oh, I understand now that this is what this poetry book is about. But some of it was fucking phenomenal. I'm going to read one of the poems just because I think that it's really fucking good and it's really short. It's called Attending the Party. To justify another month of solitude, I tell myself, despite my instinct to stay inside, it'll be good to exhaust myself of the world. Outside the yellow house on Portland Avenue, I kick the slush from my boots, ascending the empty porch. Even if I'm wrong and the light beyond the door is just a light to nowhere, I can still say that I tried, at least for a moment, to live outside the warm parameters of my loneliness. I can't stop thinking of the old man who'd salt and shovel his walk, clean and precise every morning, and how the neighbors grew suspicious of the jagged terrain of his driveway, discovered weeks later he'd passed away in his sleep. But there is a world where the people I love gather in small rooms with not enough chairs, How lucky I am to be missed by those who have run out of ways to hold me. And isn't that what I always wanted? To keep something perfect long enough for everyone to notice when I'm gone. Like, I just love it. Like, there are a lot of poems like that where it's about, like, there's a great line at one point where he says, I think I'm living the life I want to live, but how can I be certain? And I think that that's like the vibe of it, where it's very introspective. And it was, again, because it took like 20 pages to get going, I wasn't really expecting it. I just really enjoyed it. So I would highly recommend it. It's also, he's queer, and it's a lot of stories about, or a lot of poems about being a gay Vietnamese man and what that's like to have to like come to terms with it, both with himself and also with the people that he loved, and the way that he was like, am I attracted to these people because of who I am, or is it because I'm actually attracted to them? And like dealing with his relationship with his mother, where I mean, I guess this is like sort of a spoiler, but it's a book of poetry, so I feel like it matters a little less. But he talks about like, my mom treated me in a certain way when I was a kid for being gay, and then I told her about this boy that I was dating, and she had so much compassion for me that I didn't understand how to accept the compassion, and that then I had to deal with my new feelings about this. So I just thought that it was really good. So I would highly it's only like 80 pages long, so I highly recommend that. And then finally I finished The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. So fucking good. It was so fucking good. Our other book club member, Emily Pizzazz, recommended it to us. She listened to the audiobook. I read it. She said the audiobook is excellent, and that the voices of the kids inside of the book are very good, and it's very funny. I had no idea what to expect. I saw this on a bunch of lists of like best books of the last couple of years. The cover is beautiful. The art of it is really good. I didn't know anything about what it was about, but it's a beautiful story about your favorite fucking thing in the world, found family, and like magical youths that are like living on an island together. Yes. It's so good. The author, TJ Klune, is queer, and so it's also a very lovely queer love story. And like in the end, in the acknowledgements, he was like, I think it's really important to write good queer love stories. I think it's that representation doesn't just need to be about tragedy and trauma, and should be about like love and like caring and family. And it was just so fucking good. Like the writing is good, the story is good. There's like a couple of like small mysteries that are built within it that are really like, I figured out pretty quickly, but I was like so pleased with that by the time they got to the like reveals, I was just like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. Like it was just really fucking good. I just cannot recommend it enough. Like easily in the best books I read all year. And like, especially this late in the year to be like, yes, easily top 10. Like it was just so heartwarming. And like, I'm not normally the kind of person who goes for like a super heartwarming book, but I fucking loved it. It was just so good. So House in the Cerulean Sea, if you take any recommendation from me this year, like I think that might be the one I would push the hardest, because it was just so lovely. Like I'm so excited for you to read it. Like I was texting Emily and was like, oh my God, Stella's gonna fucking love this book. And she was like, I know.
I am a slut for the found family.
You are gonna love this. This like beautiful found family living on an island together. It's the dream. So for real. It's just so lovely. It was so good. It's just as like a broader overview. It's about a caseworker who works for a government department called the Department of Care for Magical Children, and like magic exists in this world, and it's just like a thing that it sort of is like the X-Men, but not the X-Men, where like they have to be registered.
You're selling it like hard right now. You just said X-Men, and I'm like, well,
I know. Oh, yes. Like there's like a father figure who cares for them. Like it's just so well crafted. It wasn't until I got to the end too that I was like, oh, this is kind of like the X-Men. It didn't feel like overbearing or like it was being like pushed in that direction. It was just like, oh, this is just a part of this world that this like government agency exists to like keep care of these children. And then like part of the story is about like, is this good? Is the fact that the government keeps track of these kids good and like what happens to them when they're adults, and like are they actually represented in the way that this caseworker feels like he is supposed to be doing, and like his like come to Jesus about what it means to have the job that he does and why he has the job that he does is just so good. It was so good. So highly recommend it.
It is earmarked for my next Audible credit, which comes
good. I'm
in
glad.
Just like 5 days. I like literally count down the days to my Audible credits.
Hilarious. On brand.
Yes. Well,
you're going to love it. I'm super excited for you to listen to it.
Yay. What is your rant this week?
My rant is definitely a cop-out because I mostly want to talk about John Moxley, but my rant is that addiction is bullshit. Not like people being addicted to things is bullshit. Like addiction as a thing that happens to people fucking sucks. And like that someone like John Moxley, who, if you don't know, I don't know how you don't know if you listen to this podcast, but John Moxley recently went into a rehab facility because he's dealing with addiction to alcohol. That someone can exist where they're like aware of their own addiction and they're like, but I'm okay and I'm managing it, is like one of the perils of addiction. Mm-hmm. And that you think like, oh, well, it's not as bad, or I don't think that I'm experiencing it quite as bad as other people. And so that means that I
still have a job. I still have a house. I still have a relationship. I still have this. I've been surrounded by high functioning alcoholics and non-functioning alcoholics my whole life. And like,
yep.
That it's hard. It's almost harder when they are high functioning.
Yes, absolutely.
It is harder when they are high functioning.
Yeah, because it's like you tell yourself like I should be able to manage this, or everything else about my life is so good. Who am I to complain that I'm going through this? Like, it's just awful. And like, it sucks so hard that so many people experience that. But like, I really wanted to talk about too, like, I think it's fucking phenomenal that he went into rehab. I think the fact that he pulled himself out of the #1 contenders tournament, like knowing how excited people were about his potential match with Daniel Bryan, like takes a lot of courage, and I think is
and to be really open about it. He could have just been like, oh, I have an ACL tear or something, or like, oh, right. Whatever. But the fact that they chose to be really open about it is super brave and also really important. And the fact, honestly, that like AEW, when that was announced, talked about it really openly on TV, and other people talked about it, like it really destigmatizes it. Like,
yes, absolutely. I've already seen a bunch of people talk about like hearing him talk about, allowing it to be talked about that he was very publicly going into rehab has made a lot of people reconsider their own relationships with alcohol, which is so important. And like, it really speaks to how people of certain celebrity can really positively influence the people who watch and care about their performance. Like, people, you can say whatever you want about wrestling and how it's silly and dumb, but like it really does have massive impacts on people who care about it when you see somebody who you respect and whose build is like one of the toughest motherfuckers on the planet being like, I have a problem and I have to get help for it, is very moving. And so I just wanted to like make sure that we acknowledged that, so that I'm shoehorning, my favorite thing to do in 2021 is shoehorn shit into other shit. Like, I just think it is very admirable that he would, again, especially like we were saying, at a time where he's like, I'm so happy with my wife. I have a new daughter who I love very much. My career is going super well. It was like literally the day after his book was published. Like, his book, which sold the fuck out and is so backlogged with publishers. I pre-ordered it in May and my copy won't come in for like another 2 weeks.
That's wild. You're just going to have to let me borrow yours at this point when you're done.
Yeah. I will. I had to call there's a really, just a free plug if you're in Chicago and you haven't been to the Bookseller, which is
I love the Bookseller.
Oh my god, the bookseller is the best. It's a wine and tea shop and also a bookstore,
Yeah,
and like
it's
it
the
fucking
best.
rules. It's the best. And I put in my order with them months ago, and so I called them and was like, "Hey, I know you guys switched systems really recently. I just want to make sure my order didn't get lost." And the woman I spoke to was so nice. She's like, "I'm so sorry. We should have updated you. It's so backlogged with the publishers that we like literally cannot get any copies." I was like, "Oh, okay. I would much rather that be the reason, and to like have such a wildly successful book come out and then the next day be like, you know what, actually I need help.
Yeah.
I need actual like professional help for this." And also like it is a big deal to check into inpatient rehab. Like that is no small task. It is very difficult to be like, I'm going to literally uproot my life and put myself into a rehab facility, and like could not respect him any fucking more for it. I think it's absolutely phenomenal that he is doing what he's doing. What's your rant?
Fuck Jay Lethal.
Yeah.
So like I didn't watch the show live because I'm the producer of Plan 9, obviously. And I booked our show a long time ago. And AEW is very annoying and they don't announce their shows like in chunks. And so it just worked out that Full Gear was on the same night as our show, and it was our first show back. I was doing this huge new number. Like, if it was a different show or show I wasn't in, I would have pulled out and, you know, done Full Gear. But, like, Plan 9 doesn't happen without me. And also, it was our first show back. Like, I wanted to be fully present. So I didn't watch it live. And, you know, I don't really give a shit about spoilers. So I was, like, not watching along. But I would check Twitter and stuff and, like, excited about Cowboy and, like, all that stuff. But, like, when I saw Jay Lethal as All Elite, I was like, so, like, it soured a lot of it for me. I was like, that fucking sucks. That really sucks. Like, Jay Lethal is a known sexual predator. He's a sexist piece of shit. He's like, is he a great wrestler? Yeah, there are a lot of other people who are great wrestlers and wrestlers of color who aren't sexual abusers. And like the fact that people who had multiple allegations against them and like big allegations against them, like it's one thing to be like, to watch a shitbag company like ROH just be like, we don't give a shit about speaking out. Like, that makes sense because ROH is a shitbag company. Like, there's a reason why we stopped watching them. Like, even though there's a lot of people who were previously employed by ROH that we liked. Like, my favorite female wrestler wrestled with ROH a bunch. Like, but I'm not going to watch it. Like, I'm just not. Like, they're a shitbag company. So, like, you can kind of be like, okay, whatever. They have Jay Lethal. But the fact that AEW, who's, like, supposed to be this like, you know, transformative thing in wrestling and is in many ways, hired somebody like Jay Lethal is just disgusting. And I saw a tweet too that was like, this feels like a test to see if they can bring in Marty, and that like is gross and also makes me want to fucking like vomit. Like, why not hire John Grisham? Why not hire Keith Lee? If you want more people of color on your roster, great. That sounds great. I mean, I know Keith Lee probably has like a non-compete right now, but like there are a lot of really good wrestlers of color that aren't sexual abusers, known sexual abusers. Like, I don't know how any like more plain to say that. Like that, like, fuck that.
Yeah. We were watching the pay-per-view today, and I like walked out of the room at the match before, and so I was like doing something, and I walked in and he was just on the screen, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I was very confused at first, and then was like, oh, I'm glad I wasn't in here to watch the pop that he got. Like, it sucks.
It really sucks. It's my job to watch these things, and I'm very grateful for my job. But the fact that I have to watch a show with like Jay Lethal on it every week, maybe twice a week, and like have to comment on it, like, and comment on it in a way that, like, you know, I'm very lucky and can say a lot of what's on my mind, but I can't just every week be like, fuck this dude. I'm going to probably do what I do with Matt Riddle, where I, like, kind of just don't tweet that much during his match, or I tweet around it. Like, I'll be like, at least Matt Riddle's in a tag team, so I can just talk about Randy Orton.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're probably right about testing the waters to bring fucking Marty in.
It's not me. I saw that tweet and I was like, wow, this tweet is really depressing. It's like 1 a.m. and I'm covered in whipped cream and I'm pissed.
That sucks, especially knowing that he and Serena Deeb are together, and like she's really heavily on AEW's women's roster. I hate that. That fucking sucks.
It does suck indeed.
Woof.
Anyways, fuck Jay Lethal, fuck ROH, and fuck whoever thought that it was a good idea to bring this motherfucker in.
Yeah. Yep. It is really bizarre the way that AEW just like looks past a lot of speaking out. It's like, okay, that was only like 2 years ago. It wasn't that fucking long. Like, y'all had to wipe one person in very particular off of like all of your old pay-per-views. Like, maybe you should be a little careful about who you're hiring when you have like really substantive allegations against people. Like, I like understand too, he has like a really strong fan base, but those are also people who are like, I don't believe these women, and like that fucking sucks.
Yeah. Fuck
That blows.
Jay Lethal.
Yeah.
What's your rave?
Well, my rave is about AEW. So, in general, honestly, I thought that Full Gear was a really good show. There were a lot of things about it I really liked. This is not my particular rave, but I thought that they did a great job. I thought the Britt and Ty match was very good. And at the end of it, I looked at my watch and I was like, oh, this was only like 13 minutes long. It was pretty fucking short. It did not feel like 13 minutes. It honestly felt like a much longer match, but in like a really positive way, because they went fucking balls to the walls for like the entire 13 minutes.
Ty Conti is one of the most improved wrestlers, I think, and like she's really found a good way to like actually blend wrestling technique and her judo technique. So it is this like very like hard hitting. I mean, I feel like her style is what they wish Ronda's style was. Like,
yep, totally.
It's not
100%.
Absolutely. And Britt is like a bad bitch who's not afraid to get fucked up. So like I knew that match was gonna be like hard hitting, and that's great. Mm-hmm. Wish it was longer, but like TK can get fucked.
Yeah, that's, evergreen complaint about the women's matches at AEW. I mean, I think part of the reason it felt so much longer than it actually was is because I'm so used to them cutting to commercial in the middle of their matches that it was like, oh, I'm actually getting to see all 13 minutes of this, which is a whole match with no interruption? What? But I also really liked that. I thought they did a really good job of the character storytelling of Ty, where like one of the things that they kept saying over and over on the commentary is like, she still allows herself to be surprised when she doesn't win with certain moves. And I thought that they did a very effective job of that storytelling, which like, yeah, if you tell these stories and you just lean into what you've allowed these women to build their characters into, they can fucking carry. And so I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really good. But the thing that I most about rave 100% about, I've raved about this a ton. I talked about how fucking excited this was. They did such a fucking good job with Hangman's storyline. Yeah. They've spent 2 years building up to this culmination, and they fucking nailed it. Like, truly and sincerely fucking nailed it. The match was really good. The introduction to the match was really good. Like, I cried when he came in. I knew I was gonna fucking cry, and I absolutely did. The graphics team. Oh my god.
My rave's the fucking AEW's graphics team.
Oh my god, it was so... I didn't notice it at first, and then we got to the end of the match, and I was crying, and Michael was like, you didn't see the graphics thing, did you? And I was like, no. And so we went back.
You always have to check Hangman's graphics.
I was already crying. I wasn't paying attention to the graphics. I was just so excited. The only spoiler that I had for the entire show was the Hangman won. But like, I knew that was going to happen.
A spoiler. Like, it would have been a spoiler if he didn't win. It would have been like, we all jump on our goddamn horses and we riot.
Yeah. Yes. So like, it was like, okay, well, this is a spoiler, but also like, whatever. I knew that this was going to happen. And so as soon as he started to make his entrance, I just started crying because I was like, I'm so happy. I can't believe they're actually going to fucking do it. And so I like didn't check the graphic. And so Michael rewound it and we watched his whole entrance package again. And so then I saw the "we're proud of you" thing and I just started weeping. I was so excited. Like, he just seems like he's the opposite of what we were talking about, where they just like look over speaking out. Like, he seems like he's one of those guys, like you were talking about Misha Collins. If I found out that Adam Page was a shitbag, I would be genuinely disappointed.
I would be devastated.
It would be very upsetting to find out that he's a piece of shit, because he seems like an actually very nice guy. And like, there was a tweet that I saw going around today too from 2016 when he first joined Bullet Club, where he was with the class of students that he taught at the time, that said, when your teacher joins Bullet Club, so he cancels all your exams. And it was all of them looking so excited for him. And like, that was side by side with him holding the belt. And it was like, man, you really put your heart and soul into this in a way that you haven't forgotten your roots. And I've just found that very moving. And also, like, I have no idea. I don't know him. I don't know how the booking is done. I don't know the way that they're doing their story with him. But I also really appreciate that he hasn't been drinking on TV after they announced Mox going into rehab. And then...
Well, it's also part of his story of, like, I was in a really fucked up, dark place. Like, so It makes sense that he's not, like, an alcoholic cowboy anymore. Because he's, like...
Right. And, like, I was so excited when he won, but I didn't cry at the end of the match. But then when Dark Order came out, I just, like, lost my shit.
Yes.
It was, like, we were talking before about, like, found family. Like, that's what that story feels
for
like.
Found family.
Yes, like, hello, queer people. Obviously, we're like, give us a found family. But, like, when he offered him the beer and he just, like, threw it on the ground and hugged them, I lost my fucking shit. Like, they just did such a good job. And also, I think it's very indicative of, like, they've allowed outside forces of how the fans react to these stories to also help shape this. Like, they clearly didn't intend for him to be part of the Dark Order when they started this story even a year ago, maybe a year ago, because that was when Brody died. But like 16 months ago, this was not where this story was planned, of him becoming part of this like beautiful found family, because at the time they were just a cult, like
like a weird cult. Yeah.
And so this, like, the way that they have like brought him, and they called it his family, and like that his family's coming out, and this like family that he's found himself to be a part of. Like, I just found that really beautiful. I think that they've treated this story with respect in a way that is fantastic. Like, I know the original plan was to have him win it all out, and then he went on paternity leave, and to have him come back and be like, yeah, I'm a real man. I took paternity leave to help my wife care for our fucking child.
Yeah.
And to be able to make that part of this story in a way that's effective and not emasculating, I fucking loved. I just am so happy that they did such a good job with this. And like, again, one of the things that AEW can do very well when they choose to do it is to give people what they want. And like, this is very much that. They really embrace, like, people love this character and people want to see this character do well. And like, he's not going to lose immediately to Bryan Danielson. JR called him Daniel Bryan, and then like 2 seconds later was like, I obviously met Bryan Danielson, and then just very quietly under his breath said, God, just leave me in the woodshed. I laughed
you know what?
hard.
I don't usually agree with JR, but I do agree with him. Leave him in the woodshed.
Well, also, like, I like that they've allowed him to like poke at that and to be a little more self-aware that it's like, yeah, I've made this mistake a lot, and like, I appreciate that they allow that to not be like a cough button thing, like. And so, but I like, he's not gonna lose to Bryan. Like, I'm looking forward to watching them wrestle.
I mean,
because
it makes
I know
sense for him to be Bryan's first loss too.
Exactly, that's what I was just gonna say. That I feel like it's appropriate for him to be the one.
Bryan. He should be Punk. He should like build his title on their backs. Frankly, that's why they're there.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Oh, also, like, as a secondary rave, if you have not read Eddie Kingston's op-ed blog, I don't even know what to fucking call it, it was so fucking good. It made me cry. Like, I wept. It made me weep. It was so fucking good. It was very hard to read sometimes, but because he's very honest about his like dealings with depression and what that's been like, and the road to get where he is now. But that, I thought, was also a very well done storyline with him and Punk. And also, like, what a fucking absolutely brilliant professional wrestler that I don't think they anticipated that people were going to turn on Punk. And that, like, that happened. People love Eddie so much that they booed Punk organically. And then it was like, cool, let's turn Punk heel. Like, also, Punk is way better as a heel.
Yeah.
This match made me give a shit about Punk for literally the first time since he came back. Like, it was very exciting when he came back, and like I was also very moved
you're
by
like
that,
happy
but,
for
like,
other people, and you're like, cool, I'm glad that you get to like get the thing you loved back, but also like I don't really care about watching your matches anymore because like I've moved on. But like, yeah, let him be the
and,
Punk
like,
that people like, which is the bad guy.
yeah, and like I hate that it's clobbering time thing. I think it's so stupid.
Yeah, because the
and so I
Fantastic Four
love
suck. Hot take.
it's just, and like I don't have any nostalgia for him, which is why I haven't cared about like any of the shit that he's been doing inside of AEW, because I'm like, oh great, you're happy, everybody's happy, but like isn't your whole deal that you're a piece of shit? And so to like be able to bring this in and have this like come out inside of this storyline, I thought was really beautiful. And also like as a very personal thing, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but he mentions Eddie in this article that he wrote mentions very explicitly his friendship with Larry Sweeney, Alex Wybrow, who was also a very good friend of my husband's. They lived together for a while, and so when he got to the part about how Alex wrote him this letter and was like, "I'm really concerned and sad for you, and I want to make sure you're okay," I literally had to put my phone down because I just started weeping. I thought it was very moving that he shared that story, and I thought it was very moving, especially as Eddie acknowledged later, like Alex took his own life really shortly after that, and so to know that somebody who is experiencing that kind of darkness would reach out to somebody else and be like, I want to make sure you're okay. I just thought it was very moving. So I cannot recommend enough reading that article. It was just really well done. Anyway, what are your raves?
My rave, just to keep in the theme, I guess, of like sluts for found family, is we talked about it a little bit before, but like our burlesque company had our first live full show back last night, and our company is almost 10 years old. We are one of the longest running shows in Chicago at this point, because a lot of shows have folded. And
that's wild. That's fucking dope.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Also, like, you built that. That's your
like
company.
My baby.
You fucking built that.
That is built truly with my literal blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
And last night was like a lot for me personally. Like, not only was I debuting a new act that I really cared about, that I like worked very hard on, but also like I haven't produced a show like that in almost 2 years. And I was like, man, I feel nervous for the first time. Because, when you're doing something for so long, it becomes second nature. And I was like, man, I have like year 3 jitters. Like, I don't know what the fuck is going to happen. But we sold out, which is incredible. And like, totally patting myself on the back. But like, we have this very unique audience. Literally everybody who ever performs with us, company members and not company members, are like, there's like nothing like performing for a Plan 9 audience. They are invested and loud and wild, and we've built this, like, we have people who have been coming to our shows for a decade. Like, we have people who were at the first show and are still in our audience. And like, we have like little like groups, or like the bitch balcony, and like, the people who come, and like, that is incredible. And that's like kind of unheard of in a lot of like live theater type stuff. And it is this our show is very polished, but it's also really messy in an organic way, where we have like conversations with the audience. And it feels like it is why live theater is so unique. And when the pandemic was happening, we did one digital show, and like I did a couple like videos and stuff, and I was like, I'm grateful for these opportunities, but this is not why I do this. Like,
right.
Spoiler alert, like, or not spoiler alert, or like maybe like shocking thing to say, but I guess if you pay attention, you probably could have picked it up. Like, I don't love burlesque anymore. Like, I've been doing it for a long time, and I have a very complicated relationship with it. And to go to do that show and like walk into that environment where it's like so unique, and be like, this is one of the only places that I actually like performing still, which maybe seemed like very narcissistic. Like, I only like performing for myself because I can control all of the elements. But it's also like, it is a product of this like found family. Like I can show up and kind of be like, I need you to do this, I need you to do this, or I don't have to worry about you guys. Like everybody does their shit. I don't have to worry about the quality of the acts. You know, I just like, here's what we're doing. Everybody throw your shit in. Let's go. And we had a bunch of new people in our audience last night that had never seen our show before. And like Ray, who did truly a hilarious number.
Yeah.
Her boyfriend had never seen a Plan 9 show and has only been to 3 burlesque shows, 2 classic burlesque shows that he was like, those are fine, I guess. And then this one, and she texted me, he was like, he couldn't stop talking about it. He didn't get any of the references, but he was like, he had something to say about each act and was like, that was delightful. I didn't understand shit that was happening because we're a nerdless company and like there are a lot of Easter eggs.
Niche. Very niche.
Very niche. But the great thing about our company is like you don't have to have seen a single episode of Supernatural, and like that would have probably been fun because I'm like, you know, or like Twilight. It was still a fun act. And so it was like a really validating thing to hear from, you know, somebody who has very minimal experience with burlesque, to be like, that was great. I had a drag king come up to me and be like, this is what drag should be. Like, this is good camp. Like, this isn't boring. And I was like, hey, that's a great compliment.
Fuck like, yeah, dude.
So yeah, it's just like this very... It is our found family. It is our built community, and it is just nice that we get to do it again. And it is stressful and drives me insane. And I truly hate every one of them, every person in the company. But I also love them so much. I hate them because you're all a big pain in my ass. But I also love you guys so much. And it was just like a nice reminder of like, there's a reason that we still do this, and if and when we stop, we still have like 10 years or 10 plus years or whatever of like these wild, crazy memories. We had a guest performer, Vivi Valens, who has been in our show before, but hasn't been in our show for several years. And she backstage was like, y'all are wild. It's like, yeah, we are.
Also, like, I would like to point out too, like, it's part of what makes that audience so great is it's not just that they're really invested. It's not just that they are involved and they give a lot of feedback. It's that to have an audience like that who's still respectful and still like treats the performers with absolute 100% respect and consent all the time. Like, when was the last time you had to warn an audience member? Like, I can't remember. And I've been doing this with you guys for like 8.5 years almost.
Yeah, I haven't thrown anybody out in several years. We did have at Convergence 3, which I think, no, it wasn't our last show, but at Convergence 3, like in 2018, I think, we did have a group of people walk out because they didn't know that there would be nudity.
Oh, that's right.
And Eva was like, should I refund them? And I was like, absolutely not. Those dumb fucks can't read the fine print. That money is mine.
Yeah, for real. That's a whole different thing.
I know, but I'm just saying, yeah.
Yeah, like in general, the fact that the audience is, and also those people just left. They didn't like heckle. True. They weren't like pieces of shit about it. And like they clearly realized that they were the ones in the wrong and left. It's not like, oh, this whole audience is on our side, that this is bad. Also, if they had done that, the audience would have shut them the fuck down. So I think that that's a huge part of it too, is that like only having performed in a couple of other companies and like really like kittened for a couple of other companies because you asked me to do it. Like that's not a guarantee with most burlesque audiences. And there is like a very high chance that you go into a place that's unknown, that you get at least one audience member who's kind of a piece of shit. And so to be able to go into a space like Plan 9 and know that it's very safe to be able to kind of do buck wild bullshit is like very unique. And I think is a huge part of what makes that such a great audience experience for new people also, is to realize like you're kind of surrounded by people who set the tone for what you're allowed to go nuts, but also you're expected to be like, professional is not the right word, but like you're expected to be like courteous in a way that like there's just this like, oh, it's a burlesque show, I can act however the fuck I want attitude in a lot of other places, which is not true, but is like,
oh yeah, I've had bachelorette parties like try and steal my costume pieces and shit, like crazy.
Yeah, and like that that's never a problem at Plan 9. Like, shit goes flying into the audience all the time. And, like, as the person who has to clean that up most of the time, like, the audience is so helpful. Like, they're like, oh, here's this thing. I picked it up for you. And, like, I've never had to worry about anybody, like, fucking with presets, any of that. Like, it is a truly unique experience.
The audience is just, like, there for the ride, which is great. And, like, we had 3 guest performers in our show last night, and 2 that had never performed with us before, and they had like really positive things to say, and it was just like a nice reminder, especially again for me, who I have like a very complicated relationship with burlesque. It was like, oh yeah, this is fun, this is nice. No other place will let me do all the weird shit I like to do, and I get to do it surrounded by other people doing weird shit. It's like it's a very unique space that we have created, and I'm very grateful for it. Yes.
Absolutely.
That's it. Found family forever.
Found families. Woo!
We have 2 Peg Mary Kills from one of our favorite listeners, Jolene, who loves to be mean and target us.
Yes, she's very good at it.
This one is her trying to target you. It says, so fuck, marry, kill, Zoe Sky, Mercedes, and Colt Cabana.
That's hard.
Yeah, it is.
I like all those people so much.
Remember how you used to be so fucking into Zoe Sky?
Yeah, Zoe Sky fucking
She fucking
rules.
rules. She's the new Shimmer champion. But I can't even, honestly, like, well, maybe we'll talk about it in the future, but, like, I can't even process all of the shit happening with Shimmer. It, like, really breaks my heart.
No,
So
I agree.
I can't. I have a lot of, like, complicated feelings, and I don't want to cry right now.
Yep. Yeah. Also, like, just as, like, a short, we do not have to go into this any further than this, but, like, if she is the final Shimmer Women's Champion, I think that's pretty fucking great.
It's pretty fucking dope.
That they did that. That being said, I think that I don't want to banish. I would banish Zoe Sky, I guess. Fuck Mercedes for sure, or let her fuck me, I guess. I don't know. I'm certainly not gonna top her. That's wild. That's certainly never happening. I don't know though. Like, she seems like she'd be such a good wife.
She seems like she'd be a great wife. I don't think I could handle Colt's like anxiety and personality full time.
I mean,
so I think he'd be the fuck for me, and I'd marry Mercedes.
That's true. Although I take it, this is gonna sound terrible. I take a very hands-off approach to marriage. So I feel like it might be fine.
That is very funny. Oh, that is very funny.
You go live your life, I'll live my life. We'll meet up in the evenings. Things will be fine.
That's so funny. I take a very hands-off approach to marriage, so I'll be fine.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be way harder for him. He'd be like, I need so much more emotional support. I'd be like, that's why we're open. You can get that elsewhere.
Like, that ain't me, pal.
That's not my vibe. Sorry. All right, your very specifically targeted fuck, marry, kill from Jolene.
Great.
This one is much meaner.
Yeah, I'm easier to target than you because of your hands-off vibe.
Yeah, those are all, here's people you like. Now you have to make a decision. This is not the case with these ones. Here are your 3 fuck, marry, kills. Jared Padalecki.
No.
Shaza McKenzie. Tessa Blanchard.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck.
You have to marry one of these people.
Oh, fuck.
She got ya.
I can't. Okay, I'm going to kill Tessa because I can't deal with Tessa. Tessa was like one of those heartbreak moments for me because I was fucking ride or die for Tessa, and like I choose death. So murder Tessa. Oh, I hate. Shaza's just kind of like a general shitbag. So, and like she was just mean to me personally several times. So I'm like, so maybe But like, whatever, we could have a conversation. She might be an okay person if we talked one-on-one in a not, wrestling or Twitter environment, So I guess I'll marry her. Then I guess I'll just like wham bam, thank you, ma'am, Jared.
You could top Jared Padalecki easy.
I feel like I would just lie back and think of England and be like, let's just get this over with.
No, you have to peg him. That's
true.
The
That's
deal.
True. That's true. Yeah, that's fine, I guess.
I mean, I guess you could lie back and think of England and allow him to peg himself, but like, there is some degree of difficulty involved in that.
I don't know. Can we get Genevieve involved? Hey, that will make it better. I'm not sure.
I was gonna say, would that make it better?
I mean, she's very pretty.
Fair enough.
Terrible.
That was a very good targeting, Jolene. Good job.
Okay, well, that's it. That's the podcast.
You can find us on the internet. You can find me at NYD Urgency on Instagram. It's just books. That's it. That's all I post.
It's just books. You can find me on Twitter at Stella_Cheeks. You can use the hashtag #NotYourDemoPod to interact with this podcast, and make sure you follow our production company at NYD Productions on Twitter and Instagram, where you can get updates for Spooky 30s, extracts, and this shit show.
This shit show. You can also send us an email at notyourdemo@gmail.com with book recommendations, Peg, Mary, Kills, questions, whatever. It's a real free-for-all.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? And then rate, review, subscribe, and if you want more access to our behind the scenes like notes and stuff, outtakes, extra podcasts like Every Mania Ever, unofficial channels, tester episodes, or if you just want to like chat with us in a more like one-on-one environment, you can go to our Patreon, where you can get access to all of that for only $1. Feel free to give more if you want, and you get access to our patron only Discord.
Yeah, where there's all kinds of shit going on in there.
All the time. We have one channel that just populates whenever Misha Collins tweets something.
That's absolutely 100% true. We do. We also have something called Stella's Link Lounge, where it's just Stella and Jolene talking about fanfic.
Hey, sometimes Kat does it.
And Kat. All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Hey, I need more feral people in our Discord so we can like spam each other with links. Come on.
Yeah.
If you're horny, join the Discord.
I feel like what also probably happens is there's a lot of lurking that goes on in the link channel.
Yeah, lurking is fine.
Yeah, lurking's totally fine. That's how I use Tumblr exclusively.
I mean, that's kind of how I still use Tumblr. Tumblr's a good place to lurk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's designed to be lurked at.
The only time, you know what? If I ever really started putting shit on Tumblr, it would just be me being like, there are not enough Mitch Pileggi gifts. Here's my Mitch Pileggi Tumblr for me and 10 other people.
While I waited for I'm sure people are aware of this, but the playback on Bleacher Report is trash of Full Gear. When I tried to play it, the Spanish and English commentary were stacked on top of each other, so it was fucking unwatchable, basically. Michael downloaded it. We paid for it, and then had to download an illegal version because we, couldn't watch the playback,
Get
which
that
sucked.
money back.
But while we were waiting for it to download, I watched an episode of X-Files that we will not get to until, the end of season 3 of X-Tracks, which I don't know that I would think to put it in my top 25 episodes, but it's a really fucking great, insane Mulder episode. And I always forget that Mitch Pileggi's in it, and he shows up and is basically like, you're lucky you don't have your ass in a sling right now, Mulder. And I was like, ooh, Stella's gonna love this episode.
Mitch Pileggi saying the word ass? I'm in.
Threatening Mulder in a way that definitely led to several fics, you're in.
Daddy. All right. We ended this podcast 5 minutes ago. Until next time.
Till next time, everybody. Mark out.
Fuck off.
Bye.
My period.